Hi, thanks for coming. Wow, full room. How many people here are familiar with Stack Overflow? Awesome. Almost, I think that was 100%, yeah. And how many people know that Stack Overflow is based in New York City? Okay, how many people, anyone here from outside of California? Awesome. New York? New York? Awesome, okay. Oh yeah, I recognize you. Awesome. So a little about myself. I was at Google in the SRE group for about 7 years. And I'm going to move this over. Okay. Working mostly on internal infrastructure. I wasn't on the cool teams, you know. But in 2012, I joined Stack Exchange. David already generously plugged my other activities and books. So what is Stack Exchange? A lot of people are familiar, everyone here seems is familiar with Stack Exchange as being the question and answer website, StackOverflow.com. But a lot of people don't realize that we have more than 140 other question and answer websites, ranging everything from server fault for coders, but also English grammar, math, physics. Every major world religion has one. And also, a lot of people aren't familiar with the fact that we have another business, which is about half of our business is Stack Overflow Careers, which is a job and recruiting website, which we think that the game dynamics that we've invented there force recruiters to treat us a lot better as engineers. So, so whether you have a question on the Judaism site because you have a vegetarian coming to your Passover dinner and aren't sure what to do, or you have a pet python who isn't eating and you're not sure what to do, or a different kind of python, you want to hire a Python programmer, we're the site for you. Stack Exchange is a lot smaller than you'd think. Even though we are in the top 50 largest websites according to Quantcast, we scale we scale through fast hardware and good algorithms. So we actually have dozens of machines instead of hundreds. And another unique thing about us is we're a mixed Windows and Linux site. One of the few large websites who, our rendering and database layer is Windows. So those questions about Linux that you're asking, the HTML is generated with C#, talking to IIS and SQL Server. Though, how do we scale that? Well, we surround it by Linux with, for caching and load balancing, security, and the search, and all that sort of stuff. Or, as I like to say, we have a soft GUI Microsoft Center and surrounded by a hard Linux shell. So this talk is about my success and failure of trying to bring the SRE philosophy with me when I came to Stack. And I'm going to do it in the form of an assessment. How are we doing so far? Pedro had a very similar slide this morning. This was Ben Treynor's keynote from last year, the 12 keys to SRE. And now I could do a very boring presentation where I go one by one and explain that when I arrived in 2013, we were already doing some of these, not doing some of these, some of them were irrelevant, and then show that over the course of almost 2 years, we've made certain progress, we've turned some into maybes. But I think it would be more useful to you if we reorganize things a little bit. And if you think about these 12 items, they really are in 4 different categories. Some of them relate to management practices and budget practices that drive the behavior that you want your product management to have, and that particular behavior being that they treat operations seriously. A group of them deal with handling outages and incidents really well. Another category is being SLA-driven in all of your operations. And the last category is how to manage your operation overload. Is there? I think it's loose. The video is loose? Oops. It's getting darker. Yeah, let's try this. Hey. Okay. Let's try this. So that last category is how to manage operations overload. And these are my summaries or categorizations. So let's first deal with the easy ones first. And we'll get to the more interesting ones second. So when I arrived, having these management and budget dynamics that drive the right behavior in your product management is already done at Stack. Because we're so small, the technique of having one funding pool for both your developers and SREs, well, that was easy because we have one budget pool for everything. I mean, you know, lunch. So let's move on to the next category, handling outages and incidents awesomely. So this is really about having your on-call schedule organized in a way that you only have 1 or 2 incidents per shift. And the reason that this is important is that every outage is an opportunity for learning and improving the system. And that learning and improvement only happens if you have time after the outage to make those improvements and communicate what you've learned. And so if you have more than 1 or 2 incidents per shift, when you're done with your shift, you're not going to have time to do that follow-up work. This was a no-brainer for us at Stack because we get paged very rarely. And we worked on those other 2 things in the last 2 years. We improved our postmortem system, and actually I have more slides about this. So why is it important to handle oh, yes? Would you say shift duty in a day or a week? It depends on if, good question. So do I mean a day or a week? What I mean is, well, in my situation, a week, right? So that once you're off call. But if you're doing like follow the sun 3 shifts a day, then that just might mean the gap between your turns. If you're on 9 to 5 every day, you know, of the week, then your other time should be free. Okay. So why is doing postmortems really well important? And it's important because that's how we learn and communicate from each outage. And not only how we learn as the SRE team, but how we educate the developers and the entire company. So as a result, instead of outages being this, you know, bad thing, like no one likes outages, well, you start to like outages because every outage teaches the whole organization and makes the whole organization smarter. So we've created an environment where, well, first of all, one of the biggest changes we made was we adopted a template that lets us be consistent in how we do the postmortems and takes a lot of the hesitation of getting started away because, well, the template already kind of did that initial thinking for you and gives you a structure. The template's available on my website or you can email me. And we have a policy of doing a PM every time that there's an outage, a user visible outage. And as a result, the last time I did a PM and sent it out to the whole company, afterwards I got a reply all from one of our developers, Anna, who said, I don't know about anyone else, but I really like getting these postmortem reports. Not only is it nice to know what happened, but it's great to see how you guys handled it both in the moment and how you plan on preventing this in the future. Really neato, thanks for the great work. I'm really proud to be in an organization where after an outage, the response that I get from my coworkers is really neato, thanks for the great work. So, the template, oh yeah, it's on my website. It's also in Appendix D of my new book. But if you really want to learn how to do postmortems awesomely, Google for John Allspell postmortem. He works at Etsy, and he has a number of blog posts that are just brilliant. Okay, so let's go on to the next category. So being SLA-driven in your operations and monitoring. When I arrived, we were not so good in this category. Defining SLAs is really, really difficult because it means you have to talk to people, right? You have You have to talk to product management. You have to talk to engineering. Oh, man. And people are hard, right? It would be so much easier if people just had an API and you could just like get SLA and be done, but that doesn't happen. And monitoring is also really hard. Or monitoring against an SLA is very difficult in outside these unicorns like Google and Facebook and stuff, because a lot of the monitoring products are kind of up-down monitoring. And up-down monitoring is bad. If you get an alert when the system's down, then you're already in an outage, right? The outage is built in. So more modern monitoring systems collect a time series of data, and that lets you analyze the data and be alerted when systems are sick instead of down. And therefore, you're preventing outages. And this kind of data is also required for capacity planning and stuff. So what's the status of this for Stack Exchange? Well, we were dissatisfied with the existing monitoring tools, and we built our own. We open sourced it recently. It's called Boson.org. For you ex-Googlers, it smells a lot like Borgmon. I'll say that. Wow, we're really having monitoring. Let's try this. Rebooting always works. No. Okay. I think I'm just going to be Van Gogh and say this is my blue period. So Boson, we believe it's the first so Boson lets you do really nice, complex formulas for your alerting, and we believe it's the first open source system with an IDE for developing your alerts. And that lets you build really sophisticated, interesting alerts. It uses OpenTSDB for the time series storage. We rewrote the collectors in Go and rewrote it in a way that it works on both Windows and Linux. And it's an open source project. A contributor outside the company just added some code so that it can talk to Graphite as a backend.
But is it Turing complete?
It's not Turing complete, damn it. That was a requirement. My favorite feature of this is it empowers developers to write their own alerts, because the IDE makes that easy. And it also, we made it very easy with the library for developers to decide what data gets collected. And in fact, before we were really live with the system internally, the developers were already getting into it and developing stuff. In fact, we had found our developers who just said, oh, well, here's some random things that we want to collect information about. The first graph that they produced had something that they didn't understand and led to an investigation that found and fixed a performance problem that we would have never noticed beforehand. So the really cool thing about this is the developers think it's fun. Like, that's crazy, but don't tell them that it's not fun. We don't want them to know that. That's So in conclusion, time series, good. Try out Boson. And let me go on a little tangent here for a second. SRE is concerned with these things, speed and performance, security. Wow, you all have a sticker in your bag that says these 6 things. It's as if I was involved with that. And if you think about, if you do any of these things badly, the perception that your users will get, responsive site, unstable site, overloaded site, buggy site, all of these things, what's the one word that sums all of that up? It's reliability. And that's what SRE is about. So is improving our reliability. So we want to be able to do all these things really well. Oh, here's the sticker. Now, if you're managing these things, you need to manage them. The best way to manage them is via an SLA. Oh, hey. Oh, sometimes it's the other end of the cable. Okay. So does that mean, yeah, operations was being blamed, but it was really production. Now I don't mind that they're videotaping this. Okay. So here's the problem that I discovered. And, at Google, I guess I kind of knew this, but I was too close to the issue to see it. But I really understood it once I got to Stack. If you're not driving these things based on an SLA, then you don't know when to stop optimizing, right? We want the site to be fast. Okay, let's make it faster and faster and faster and faster. And our salespeople love that because that means we always want to buy more and faster, better things, right? But if you have an SLA, you know when to stop, right? It's fast enough. Oh, okay, well, we don't have an infinite amount of time to work on things, so now we can stop and focus on other things. So if you don't have an SLA, you never know when to stop working on a particular issue, and you never know when to stop spending. But if you have an SLA, you can determine where the gaps are in what you're doing, and you know when to stop. Now, years ago, I was quoted as saying this, so I can't find where I actually said it, but it's if a service isn't monitored, it isn't a service if it isn't monitored. If there's no monitoring, then you're just running software. I'm going to update that. If it isn't a service if it isn't monitored against an SLA. If there's no SLA-based monitoring, then you're just running software. And in fact, I'll go as far as to say that the essence of SRE is that SRE is SLA-driven system administration. Another triumph of our new monitoring system is we were rolling out a new CDN product, and when we rolled it out, our website actually got slower. And I think a lot of sites that have been adopting this product might not have noticed this issue because they weren't doing before and after testing. And in fact, I can't believe that we were the first customer to notice this. The CDN provider actually spent 6 months recoding things before things got faster. Okay. So the last section, controlling operations overload. There's a lot of different things here. And I'm not going to talk about them individually. What I am going to say is it took me a while to figure out how can I, what's the essence of this? What makes these things important? And I realized it comes down to 4 words. SREs and transactional system administration. Transactional system administration is how I describe old-style system administration. Users make a request. The sysadmin does the request. Thank you very much, right? I need a new laptop. Here is your new laptop. Thank you very much. That's a transaction. And SRE is different from that way of system administration because we are doing service administration. Transactional system administration is bad. It creates a master-slave relationship. It creates the wrong dynamics. And the only way to scale it is by adding more people, right? If you're not coding your way out of solutions, if you're not turning manual processes into services, then the only way you can scale that kind of system administration is by hiring and hiring and hiring. And this scales a lot better because the SLA and the other things that I talked about before. So for example, we didn't create a monitoring system that would result in us getting tickets saying, please monitor this, please monitor that. We created a monitoring service that lets our users, our developers, develop their own monitoring rules and select what gets collected. So it becomes a workforce multiplier, right? We taught people to fish rather than fish for people. I'd like to give a very enterprisey kind of example because today I want to say that all these SRE techniques, eventually they need to trickle down to the enterprise because there are many more enterprises out there than there are sites like what's represented in this room. So let me take that laptop example. SREs shouldn't install and deliver laptops to new users, right? I think we can all agree to that. So what would an SRE answer to this be? The answer would be that we would build a system that magically knows when a new laptop is needed. It would track the HR database and see when new people are hired. It would send out emails to people who have been with the company for 2 years and are eligible for technology refresh. We'd create a portal that lets people order additional laptops. And then we would run that service that manages those things. We'd run the service that automates the installation. We would run the service that does capacity planning and projections and tells the purchasing department how many laptops to buy in the future. In other words, we would not be the people working on the auto assembly line. We are the people that build the robots that manufacture the cars. And this is better because, oh my God, do I have to explain why this would be better? Okay, So where are we in status? Well, how did we get out of transactional system administration? Well, one day we just deleted our ticket system. Not in the literal sense, because our ticket system is our CEO owns another company that is Fogbugs that runs ticket systems. But we deprecated the SRE queue, and instead we said every developer team is going to have a representative from SRE that's just part of that team. And so part of my job, for example, is to attend that SRE team's meetings. And if they need work done, if we haven't yet created a self-service version of something for them, then it does fall onto us, but we don't handle it transactionally. Our teams generally use Agile, and so if something is needed from the SRE team, it is, a Kanban board card is created, and it's just like, code needs to be written to do this feature, goes to a developer. SRE kind of thing needs to be done, it gets assigned to an SRE. And so we're just part of the team. And as a result, we have a better relationship with the teams, and as SREs, we have more free time to work on projects and our own services. So in conclusion, SLAs, 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 and transactional system administration, spread this philosophy to your enterprise friends. Try our open source project. And now we have 7 minutes for Q&A. Oh, and additional resources, or as a coworker said, shameless self-promotion. So a lot of the SRE philosophy is in the second half of the book. And also our SRE team has a blog, blog.serverfault.com, which our most recent post is probably our best ever. It's about how we upgraded our data center live while all the services were running. I tweet, we're hiring in New York City, and I saw people raising their hands. And if you're in the area, I'll be speaking about the book Tuesday and Thursday night at different meetups. Hope to see you there. And now Q&A.
Thanks. Great talk. At the risk of sounding like I'm a defender of ticketing systems, let me just ask a question, which is, in real time, during an outage, how do the SREs track and record in a way that's saved their actions during the outage?
Oh, good question. So during an outage, how do we retain information?
Some
so
organizations
our policy is
that tracking system.
the first responder to an outage creates a Google Doc, and we just keep pasting stuff in. It's on my to-do list to try out Morg, which is a open source project from Etsy, which writes the first draft of your postmortem for you by collecting logs from here and chat rooms and stuff. We have our own internal chat system that logs everything. So yeah, we have a lot of different things. But good point. I didn't mention those things, but those things do exist. Yes.
Hi, thanks. Can you go into some detail about things that you considered when creating your SLA for the service?
What do we consider when we're making an SLA for a service? So we have a couple different SLAs. The important thing is we have our internal SLAs, which I'm not talking about. What I'm really talking about is what's the SLA that you're giving to product management. So we talk to them about response time, as in how long should it take to generate a page, like 90 percentile kind of things. And actually, that is the primary thing. We're just very concerned with speed. But at other companies, it's other things. And our careers stuff, that SLA deals more with, has some financial components also, because that brings in money. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
So you talked about providing like an IDE through Boson for your developers to be able to make their own monitoring and alerting. So are they the ones that are actually getting those alerts? Are like the developers the ones who are on call, or are those alerts being digested by operations? That kind of ties in a bit to the keynote as well. Is there like sort of like a bifurcation between like dev and ops, or what's that sort of structure and on call ecosystem like?
Good
Sorry, that's a
question.
long,
So
complicated question.
who gets alerted, and how do you bifurcate between ops and developers? So let's see. Developers and ops get alerted, but we're responsible for, like, if we're getting paged, then we're responsible for it. A lot of our developers set up alerts just because they're kind of interested, like, what if this happens? And if that experimental alert rule pans out, then they'll point it at ops. And the second half of your question was, how do we divide? Because we're small, we have the luxury of having, SRE is mostly, we're always first responsible for alerts related to infrastructure, and devs are first responsible for things related to the app itself. I predict that within a year, we're gonna have to change that, much for similar growth reasons as the opening keynote talked about.
Hey, so I've got a question about post-incident review, and it looks like you've got a pretty good template here, which is, I'm just looking at it now. My question is really about when do you do the post-incident review? How many people are involved? Because one of the problems we have is, I guess, what we call post-incident review kind of lag, where we have a whole bunch of incidents that have occurred, but we haven't yet reviewed them. And sometimes they disappear into the past. It's a bit hard to get.
Okay. So how do you make sure that postmortems get done and get done in a timely way? Sure. I've been at previous companies that had a policy of the first draft had to be distributed to the team within 24 hours. We kind of have a lax policy. We'll probably adopt something like that eventually, but right now it's just, we're a small enough team that that's like the expectation with the team to do it very soon. So whoever was the first on, well, usually the first to respond ends up writing the postmortem, and then they write the whole first draft. We put it up as a Google Doc. People poke in their own, changes, and then we do one in person. Well, we don't do anything in person because we all work remote, but we do a Google Hangout where we go over it line by line. People fill stuff in, and then soon after it's sent out. And then the external version, we redact very little actually, and then send out the external version. Oh, that's not true. We redact a lot. We have like one that's very brief, and then we have a different one that's redacting very little. Yeah. We're out of time, but I will be hanging out right here. And as David mentioned, you can get 35% off. There's little cards in the back if you're interested. Thank you all for coming.